100%.
But I appreciate how you democracy works. So, yeah.
All right, good evening, everyone. We are going to call the regularly scheduled board meeting for DeWitt Public Schools to order. Please stand for the Pledge of the Flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Stoddard, will you please call the roll?
Angelina Barnes.
Here.
White Hanspike.
Here.
Jason Hansman. Brad Stoddard here. John Tramontana.
Here.
Lisa Truscott. And Brad Weaver.
Here.
We have a quorum. Oh, I'm sorry, Lucas. Here. Sorry. Not used to this.
We do just need to make one minor change to the agenda, just to add under item 4B for the student report was omitted there, so we want to make sure we include that. Do we have a motion for the adoption and to include that change?
So moved.
Support. Moved and supported. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll move into the first of tonight's presentations, which is our 2022-23 audit presentation by Plant Moran. And our presenter today is Tiffany and Stacy Seacrest. Tiffany, welcome.
Thank you for having us. I brought with me today Maddie Thompson, who is the senior auditor on engagement as well. All right, so we're here tonight to present the June 30, 2023 audit. And the audit went very well this year, as you probably are used to hearing. It is the first audit that Plant Moran is issuing out of our school district clients that we serve. And that is just a great testimony to Rob and his team for being able to close out the books so quickly after year end and really preparing for the audit and helping us get it over the finish line and kind of off everyone's plates so we can get into the rest of the season with our other districts. So congratulations on a very great audit. As you'll see in the next couple slides, we encountered no significant findings or issues as part of our audit. So thank you again for that. Your board packet does include 4 documents from Plant Moran. It includes the audited financial statements. It includes the federal compliance audit. It includes the AU 260 letter, which is the report to the board. And then it also includes this graph presentation that is being presented today. So our presentation is going to focus really on the graph items, but if you have any questions on the individual documents, please feel free to let me know or stop me at any time in this presentation. There is one thing that I did want to point out in the federal awards document. It's the single audit. The very last page of that document is a great summary of the entire audit. It's called the Schedule of Findings and Question Costs. And what that does is it summarizes both the basic financial statement audit and it also summarizes the federal awards audit. And as you can see on that document, there are no findings, no internal control deficiencies, no compliance findings, and it also identifies which program we tested as part of the single audit. So we tested the Education Stabilization Fund, which is the ESSER 3 11T 98C dollars. And one other thing that I wanted to point out on this sheet of paper this year is that DeWitt is considered low-risk auditee this year. And so what this means, this designation is part of the single audit. And in order to be a low-risk auditee, you have to have 2 years worth of single audits, and there have to be no significant findings in those audits. So if you'll remember, 3 years back is the first time in over 10 years that DeWitt required a federal compliance audit when we saw those COVID funds starting to come through. So the previous 2 years were the 2 years that were required in order to get to that low-risk auditee determination. So now that you have those 2 under your belt, you switch from a high-risk to a low-risk auditee this year. And really all that means is that our coverage threshold for testing single audit programs is a little bit lower than it would be if it was a high-risk auditee. All right, any questions on that? Okay, so now we'll get into the graph presentation. Is it arrow? Arrow. It's not. Oh, down. Left and right.
Oh,
Got it. Okay. So this first slide right here summarizes actually the first 4 slides are summarizing the report to the Board of Education. So that letter that I mentioned that is included in your packet, these first 4 slides summarize that. So our audit was conducted in accordance with the plan, scope, and timing that we distributed to you back in July. I believe you received a pre-audit communication. And so we finished our audit, we did everything that we said we were going to do in that pre-audit communication that we had with you. Significant accounting policies of the district are disclosed in Note 2 to the basic financial statements. And we are also required to disclose to you significant accounting estimates that are included in the financial statements. And those would be limited to the MIPSR's pension and OPEB liability. I know we've discussed these each year. That is DeWitt's allocated portion of the overall plan liability. So all public school districts in Michigan that participate in that plan are allocated a portion of that liability. So those are considered significant accounting estimates. And then the disclosures in the financial statements are neutral, consistent, and clear in accordance with accounting standards. The next couple slides, there will be a lot of no's in there, and that's a good thing. There were no difficulties encountered in performing the audit. There were no disagreements with management, as I mentioned, no audit adjustments, no uncorrected adjustments, and no material weaknesses in internal controls of the district. Continuing on, we had no significant findings or issues. We had no fraud or illegal acts identified as part of our audit, and no management consultations with other accountants outside of our firm. The management representation letter was received and dated August 22nd, 2023, and that is the date of our audit report. So great job from the finance team here. This last slide is just overall responsibility of the financial statements that we're required to disclose under this auditing standard. The financial statements are the responsibility of management in the district. Plant Moran's responsibility is to render an opinion on those financial statements. And as I mentioned before, our opinion is unmodified or clean, and that is the highest level of opinion that a CPA firm can give on a set of financial statements. Before I get into the financial highlights, any questions on the overall communications? Okay. The next few slides are going to focus on the general fund, so just keep that in mind as we're working through these. This first one, it presents the assets and liabilities of the general fund at June 30, 2023. Total assets of the district were about $12.8 million at June 30th, which is an increase of about $1.7 million from prior year. The assets primarily consist of cash and investments and receivables, which would be the July and August state aid payments that are received after the district's year end. The increase from last year to this year is primarily an increase in those receivables, and as we'll see in a couple slides, the revenue from state aid did increase this year, so the receivables are higher. Total liabilities at June 30, 2023 were about $4.4 million, and this is a down about $500,000 from last year. The liabilities consist primarily of that accrued liabilities category, which would be July and August teacher contract accruals that are paid out after the district's year end. Another category would be the gold category, which is labeled as other. This is unearned revenue. This is up from prior year, up about $660,000, and that is related to state funding received for student safety and mental health that has not yet been triggered revenue recognition, meaning it hasn't been spent yet on eligible expenditures under the grant, so it's considered unearned revenue until those expenditures are incurred. And then the other one I wanted to point out is the blue category, the state aid anticipation note. This is down quite a bit from last year because this year's state aid anticipation note required set-aside payments during the year instead of all being paid subsequent to the district's year end. Any questions on the balance sheet? All right, we'll move into general fund revenue. So this slide presents general fund revenue for last year, for 2022, and this year, 2023. Revenue increased about $3.8 million, or about 10.8% from prior year. The federal sources are in gold on the slide, and they did, as I mentioned before, remain high enough to require a single audit. These expenditures for this year were about you see that $2 million, that is related to those ESF expenditures that I mentioned, primarily the ESF expenditures that I mentioned. We tested things such as grant closeout reporting and allowability of expenditures within the single audit, and we had no findings. So that's a great accomplishment. With these ESSER dollars, there were a lot of requirements as far as how you could spend some of these, especially with the 11T and 98C. So excellent job from the finance team there. State sources is in the teal. That increased about $2.1 million from last year. As I mentioned, state aid did go up. The foundation allowance, the per pupil foundation allowance, increased about $450 per pupil for 2023. So you're seeing an increase in state aid even though the pupil count went down slightly, about 11 students from prior year. There was some new funding under state aid this year under 147C2, and that is related to the MIPSERS plan. As I mentioned before, those pension costs. There was an additional one-time payment this year of about $1.8 million that was revenue to the district, but that had to be turned around and remitted directly to the Office of Retirement System to pay some of those pension costs. So it really was a gross up. You got the revenue, but then the expenditures are also showing of additional $1.8 million to the pension plan. Other sources consist of special ed revenue and voc ed revenue from the ISD. Any questions on that? This slide presents the general fund expenditures. So as expected with the increase in revenue that I mentioned before, expenditures are also up. They're up about $2.8 million or about 8.2% from last year. This slide presents the expenditures by function. So you'll see that 67% was spent on instruction, 28% on support, and then 5% to other, which would be things like athletics, debt service, capital outlay. All of those ratios are consistent with the prior year, as you can see here. And then we'll flip to the next slide, which is going to present the same information, but it's going to present it by object code rather than function. So the key thing to point out here is that salaries and fringe benefits, the blue and teal section, make up about 85% of the district's total expenditures in the general fund. And that was 84% in prior years, so very consistent. Any questions on the expenditures? All right. This graph shows a comparison of instructional expenditures as a percent of total operating expenditures for DeWitt and some other local schools in the area. This information is on a one-year lag, so this is as of June 30, 2022, and it is pulled from the MDE published Bulletin 1014. DeWitt is clearly a leader in this area. What this is really saying that 72% for DeWitt, for every dollar the district spends, 72 cents goes directly to the classroom-related instructional expenditures. And you can see that DeWitt's percentage is higher than some of the local districts and also higher than the state average, which is about 61%. So excellent job. This graph takes a closer look at fund balance as a percentage of total expenditures. So you'll see over the past 5 years, fund balance as a percentage has been trending upward. The state average as of last year, so keep that in mind, is 20.7%. DeWitt is at 22.5% for this year. And we do expect that state average to continue to trend upward, similar to DeWitt's trending upward. When we break apart that 22.5%, 0.5% is in a non-spendable form. So think things like prepaid, inventory, things on the balance sheet that are not in a spendable form. 4.3% is assigned for carryover projects and student support costs, and the remaining 17.7% is unassigned, and that is that teal category. Any questions on fund balance? All right, and the last slide compares the fund level fund balance on the left to the net position on the full accrual statements on the right. So the difference between these two things is what basis of accounting is used. So on the left is the modified accrual, which is what you're used to seeing when you look at budgets of the district. We already talked about the general fund, which is in the teal on the left side. The other thing I wanted to point out was the dark blue on the left side, the 32.6 million. That is the 2023 capital projects fund. So that has increased from last year because of the receipt of the 2023 Series 2 bond proceeds. So that is a huge portion of the total fund balance. And so that will be spent over the next couple of years in accordance with your bond project budgets. And it should be noted that we also tested bond compliance as part of our audit for both the 2022 and the 2023 capital projects funds. So we test for allowable bond expenditures, and we had no audit findings for that. Moving to the right side, which is the full accrual basis, you'll see the negative net position of 33.2 million. This side adds in the district's capital assets, net of accumulated depreciation. It adds in all the bonded debt. And then the biggest thing that's triggering that negative net position is that MIPSR's pension and OPEB liability. And if you look at that liability from last year to this year, you'll see a significant increase. The OPEB liability increased by 1 million, and the pension liability allocated to DeWitt increased by 25.2 million. And you'll see that on all districts. Overall, I think if you remember, I was standing here last year, very pregnant at the time, and I mentioned that the rate of return on the plan, because it's a different measurement period, was much higher than anticipated. But after the plan measurement date, the interest rates went down, and I believe that the actual plan rate for last year was negative 4.8 compared to the assumed rate of 6%, and the prior year I believe was at 27%. So when you factor in all of those things in the actuary report, that pension liability grows significantly overall, and the piece allocated to DeWitt grows as well, and all other schools in Michigan. Any questions on any of the slides I've presented, any of the deliverables? Over to the last slide. Again, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to present. Thank Rob and his team for an excellent year. It's very refreshing to be able to just dive right into an audit and get it wrapped up, start to finish in three weeks. So excellent job. Thank you.
Any other questions for Tiffany or Maddie?
Do you know how many times we've been the first to submit everything?
Oh.
Because I think I've heard this 5 years in a row.
You know, it's definitely been the last 5 years. Usually DeWitt is first. There's really like two districts that kind of are right neck and neck that we can get out the door, and it kind of just depends on how things fall. The single audit used to be kind of this holdup with the compliance supplement being delayed. So DeWitt had kind of a heads up on that when they didn't have to have a single audit, so we could just get it out the door. But even with the addition of a single audit, you're still getting it out the door first.
Awesome.
So, thank
Anything
you for
else
the
for
opportunity.
today? Thank you both. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
I know that we do it quite often, but I think it goes without saying, and we'll probably never stop doing it. But Rob, congratulations to you and your
Thank you.
team, and thank you for all you do. We are very fortunate to have all of you to have such great results every year. It makes our jobs a little bit easier. So thank you for that. We really appreciate it. Okay, next presentation, student report. Lucas?
Hello, my name is Lucas Grazi. If none of you have ever seen my face or heard my voice, I'm here at the high school's student representative. This is my second term, and my job is to pretty much report what the students are doing this year and this month. So getting into it, high school is also bringing in 4 new staff members, one of which is being mentioned later today. Two new counselors, Ms. Martin and Mr. Gerwin. We have Mr. Ripstra, who is an ELA teacher and also the advisor for the improv troupe. And then Mr. Hingsma, who is a history teacher. Going on to homecoming tickets go on sale from 9/15, so September 15th to September 27th. Homecoming nominations for Panther Pack will go out on September 13th and will end on September 15th. We'll have a kickoff assembly on September 22nd. And we'll also have hallway decorations on both September 22nd from 2:30 to 6 and from September 24th from 1 to 5. Also on the 25th will be the DeWitt Waterfowl football game. It will be held, gates will open at 6 and the game will start at 6:30. Homecoming parade and football game, as well as tailgate, things like that, will be held on September 29th, where DeWitt's football team will go up against Grand Ledge. The homecoming dance is on September 30th, and the theme is Out of This World. For athletics football, on August 25th, the football team played against Hazlitt High School at home, and after the game was pushed back one day because of a storm, we won 27-17. Then on August 31st, in what was the biggest high school football game of the state that week, we played Mason High School at home and unfortunately lost 23-42. Their next game is this Friday, September 15th, against East Lansing High School at home. The girls volleyball team on September 6th played against Waverly High School and won with a score of 3-0. On September 9th, they played an open match tournament away at North Branch and won 3 games and lost 2. Their next match is tomorrow, September 12th, at home against East Lansing High School. The boys soccer team on September 7th played at home against Everett High School and they won 5-0. Then on September 9th, the boys soccer team also played against Divine Child and lost 0-1. Their next game is also tomorrow against Okemos High School, and that is away. Clubs and extracurriculars. On September 7th, we held a yearly club day, which allows students to walk around the commons where each club will have a table, and they get to pretty much look at what each club has to offer for what they do, and there's a lot of different clubs they get to choose from. Student government, for the most part right now, is putting their attention towards homecoming preparations. Some of the things they do is preparing the parade lineup, planning out the assembly, creating spirit days. They're also in charge of decorating the commons for the dance. Also, along with House Council, they will be helping direct students on hallway decorations on the 22nd and 24th. Then student government is planning on hosting a Tri-County leadership event similar to the MASC, MAHS events that they attend every year. For more information, you can contact Student Government Advisor Ms. Anderson or the Student Government President Parker Havard. National Honor Society NHS applications were just sent in, and they are also being filled out right now. They're due on this Monday, on the coming Monday, and it will be reviewed by our advisors to see who will be the new members of the NHS. There will also be an all-member meeting and seminar on September 20th to provide members with information on the rest of the year. And then the amount of required hours has been increased for both incoming and returning members by 5 hours, so it goes from 25 hours to 30 hours and 35 hours to 40 hours. Most other clubs are just now meeting with their advisors and members to discuss their plans for the years, discover and bring in new people. At DHS, it's highly recommended that everyone be a part of some extracurricular activity, and so we try to make sure there's a club for everyone. Other type of things is start of the new year, so we're all trying to get back into schedules, get back into routine, and I think that's about it.
Great. Any questions for Lucas?
My only question, I don't know if it's for Lucas or for Superintendent, but how many students do we have that are a part of National Honor Society?
Gosh, I
What
had the number.
percentage of the?
I think somewhere between 150 to 200 roughly.
Okay.
That is when we have both juniors and seniors, so incoming people. I think right now we only have last year's juniors, this year's seniors, so
We
it's,
haven't been inducted yet.
yeah, so we
So it's
haven't
only for
had-
juniors and seniors, so it's a pretty half.
Yeah, that's close to half.
Okay. How, and then are the requirements for volunteer hours, are those within DeWitt, outside of our area? Are they
So you can
for the
do
school?
any volunteer hours that are like in the community or around your own community where you live, so not every DHS student lives directly in DeWitt. Like I don't live directly in DeWitt, I live more close to St. John's, so I could do something in St. John's, put in volunteer hours through an app called Helper, and that app also, we are required to get 10 hours that way through that app. That will be NHS sponsored. I think the reason that it was more likely increased is because this year we offered students to volunteer at Camp Invention, which automatically would have given them 35 hours. So
I also
that,
think that they're trying to get up to pre-COVID requirements.
Okay.
Too. So a lot of the societies had lowered their hours just because of contact.
Sure, sure. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Thanks for being back. back in the new year. We know this is very time consuming, and we appreciate your thorough reports and keeping us up to date. You represent the student body very well, so thanks for being here. All right, that concludes presentations. We'll move on to public communication for items found on the agenda. It is the practice of the Board of Education to permit persons in the audience to make statements concerning agenda items at this time. Please complete a public comment form and return to the board desk if you wish to speak or prefer to express a written comment. Public comment shall be limited to 3 minutes. Brad?
Not related to the agenda.
Okay, get you later. Thank you. Consent agenda. It is the recommendation by Superintendent Shauna Spicker, the Board of Education approve, adopt, accept the following items for immediate implementation and appropriate action as presented. The approval of minutes from the regular meeting on August 14th, 2023 and the work session from August 28th, 2023. Treasurer's report bills for payment for the month of August 23. The treasurer reviewed and confirmed the checks, ACH debits, and the purchase card for the month of August 2023. And professional hiring, Marshall Gerwin for DeWitt High School counselor, Bobby Taylor, Scott Elementary 2nd grade teacher, Aislinn Mazzaros, Herbison Woods Elementary 4th grade teacher, and the 2022-2023 annual audit. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? Do we have any? We don't have any new staff members. All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Move on to action items now. As a recommendation by Rob Spagnolo, Assistant Superintendent for Finance and Operations, that the Board of Education approve the resolution to establish a line of credit of $1,500,000 as presented. Just for some background information for the audience, traditionally the district has borrowed money through a state aid note for operating cash flow needs. For the current year, the district anticipates that it will need to borrow funds for short periods of time throughout the fiscal year instead of having cash flow needs for the majority of the fiscal year. Because of this, the district will utilize a line of credit instead of a state aid note to help reduce overall borrowing costs. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? Rob, anything from you?
No, I think the summary kind of hit all the points, but any questions anyone has, I can certainly answer.
Okay, any questions for Rob? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll move to public communications for items not found on the agenda.
Excuse me, Sarah Malou?
Yep,
Okay.
thank you.
Right.
Hello, good evening. My name is Sarah. I am a concerned parent here in DeWitt School District. I have 2 children, ages 7 and 10, in 2 different elementary schools here. And I'm standing here to support the many families dealing with the unfortunate changes made with the group bus stops and reduction in buses. These changes are impacting families in our community, forcing many parents outside of subdivisions to drive to these designated bus pickup and drop-off locations. The safety of our students' transportation needs should be a top priority of this district, and we currently do not feel they are. We understand it is the parents' responsibility to get our children to these designated bus stops safely, but living in an affluent school district that passes every millage, I can't comprehend why this school cannot help all families. With a reduction of buses, our students are being forced to walk on or cross busy roads and cram themselves into overcrowded buses. Specifically, my child's bus currently has 104 students being transported home each day. Hearing there are children sitting 4 to a seat at times on this bus and students hanging in the aisles while the bus is moving are not the stories I wanted to hear in the first few weeks of school. But seriously, we are DeWitt. My family actually specifically moved here for these schools 8 years ago. This solution, unfortunately, has become unsafe, unfair, with the added stress and burden this district is placing on its families in our community. We have families with unreliable vehicles. We have single parents just trying to make ends meet, and we also have families with both parents working full-time and now having to juggle which parent will take time off of work to drop off and pick up 2 children at 2 different times in a subdivision in which they do not live. That last scenario is mine, and my family happens to be on a major roadway with no sidewalks. These are the families, they're just some of the families, needing our bus system to function properly. Please, there needs to be more consideration for the children that cannot walk or get to the pickup area safely due to speed limits and the lack of sidewalks in their area. For example, our young children, including my own, living on Airport Road, where crossing guards, the walking school bus, or walking with a group of friends will obviously not work. Families should not be punished for not living in a subdivision. We also want to mention this is not the fault of our bus drivers. They are the heroes in our community, and we are simply saying, make DeWitt Public Schools the school all bus drivers in the mid-Michigan area want to drive for. Let's pay bus drivers a more appealing wage. Find the money in our budget if safe and equitable transportation is actually a priority. I want to know if this current transportation practice, which has been created by eliminating these buses and increasing students at bus stops, is temporary, or if this is the long-term solution for DeWitt Public Schools, because 6 to 8 more years of this is absolutely daunting and disheartening for the families in our community. Personally, I've never dreaded winter more in my entire life. I appreciate the school board's time and your active listening to my questions, my concerns, suggestions. I'm hopeful the district can find a safer and more equitable solution than what we currently have for the transportation needs of all DeWitt students. Please make us feel like our children's safe transportation needs are a priority and make all families feel supported, no matter their personal circumstances. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent Spicker will address some of that at the end. Thank you.
The other comment did want to speak, but it's around the same issue.
Is that all, Brad?
That's it.
Okay. We will close public communications at this time and move on to the superintendent's report.
So we've had a great opening to the year, and just want to say now we have all teachers hired, but we're still obviously hiring support staff and drivers as well. We continue to seek drivers. At this point, we do not have enough drivers to add more stops. That is the issue. We do have competitive wages. We do offer paid training and paid certification, so we will help people get through that certification. And I will also be having an article that will be in October's More to Your Door to kind of explain what is going on and why we had to move to what we moved to. And had we not gone to bus stops, because we are down three drivers from the spring, we would have canceled 3 routes at the beginning of the school year, and they would have continued to be canceled. So even the transportation director is driving bus, so it is all hands on deck. But we are in dire need of drivers, and again, I'm hoping that putting it into the More to Your Door, it gets beyond the parents in our community, but gets to about 10,000 people, and hopefully that could help. We'll continue to advertise it. I've bought banners, we've got it on the sign, we're going to try to get the bus with the banner.
We're personally
Yes,
advertising,
at
we're
the-
putting it on
yes.
our personal pages, we're
Yeah,
begging
and at the
people to do
parade,
this.
the board will all be handing out kind of help wanted flyers at the homecoming parade as well. So we are continuing every effort. And so as far as long-term solution, I mean, if we can get the drivers, we can add more stops, but right now we don't have the drivers to do so.
Quick question on that. You say down 3 from spring, but is it technically down 5 because last spring we were down 2 than where we wanted to be as well?
Yes, yeah.
Just wanted to make that clear, so.
It's just 3 more, and then we have another one that will be going on medical in November, and we're hoping to get someone onboarded before that happens.
So you're looking in an ideal scenario to hire 5 more people?
At least 3 and then 2 sub-drivers, but yeah.
Where do we compare to other districts in terms of their bus routes? And, I mean, this is not a DeWitt problem, right?
No,
I mean,
it's
this
not.
is
Well, first of all, it's a national problem.
There's a
so-
strike in New York City
Yeah.
right now, bus drivers.
And I don't know if you saw on Dateline, there was, I can't remember which state, but kids were getting home after 9 o'clock at night because of routes. So, I mean, it definitely is an issue, and it's not just school bus drivers, it's bus drivers. So even for private companies as well.
And in terms of pay, do you know where we compare to?
We're very competitive, and we actually, because our routes don't take an hour to complete, we pay by route, not by hour. So I mean, and then also with even adding on some of our after-school programming and our extra trips, drivers have potential to even earn extra money. But some of those field trips and athletic trips are at stake as well, because obviously we have to do our to and from school routes. So, but they are, I mean, George is working magic, and I agree, our bus drivers are amazing. They're doing what they can do. And what is really scary is that I think probably a third, Rob, could maybe just retire and not do it. I mean, they're really doing it to help the community. And so that's what's scary to me, is that if we don't end up getting people to want these positions, where we'll be in 3 years.
A few questions on that. Potentially, there are even opportunities for people to be full-time and have access to benefits as well if they do some other roles. Is that a possibility or no?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. And then just to clear up the contracting issue, you know, some will get some questions. Why can't we contract with Dean Transportation or other people? It's my understanding they're having difficulty fulfilling some of the contracts they already have because they're experiencing the same problem.
Well, several things. I mean, we do use Dean for special education, but deprivatizing transportation is not something I think we want to look at. But even those school districts that do use those companies are struggling getting both buses and drivers.
Specifically to the more rural routes or the like busier, I mean, airport, there's busier areas. How are we addressing that of those folks that do live on airport or need to cross those? I mean, is there more, stops happening on those roads versus
So
other
it's
ones?
trying to get
or-
stops off of those roads, and then I know for extenuating circumstances that the department is working with them. But again, I mean, it's this, yeah, I mean, we're DeWitt, we would love to be able to provide transportation for everyone, but we're not able to do that. And so, we are doing the best that we can with what we have, and this is a burden on some families, we realize that, but it's better than not having it at all.
And I'm assuming parents are urged to contact the transportation, I mean, anybody to just kind of say, hey, this isn't working for us, or my kid's got to cross airport road or whatever. Okay, so those are being addressed
I mean, when they can,
when they can.
and if
Okay.
it's an extenuating circumstance.
There have been some changes, I assume,
Yes.
too, right?
I mean, and part of it was we needed to get 2 weeks under our belt to find out who was riding. So that's something that will also be talked about in the article that I put together, as far as how many families and how many runs are happening and how many drivers we have. So there'll be some statistics that will be available as well.
Okay.
We had our first mental health night for families, and we had about 30 families that were in attendance. So those are virtual nights, and they are confidential, and we'll have 4 more throughout the school year. And I was honored to be a guest speaker at the DeWitt High School's Women Leadership Club, which was quite a bit of fun. And as Lucas mentioned, parade and homecoming is fast approaching, and I do know student government is working. They have a parade committee, and they're actually working this week to notify local areas that are affected by the parade, so people understand the parade route and when those times that might affect them. As far as strategic plan is concerned, we had our first scoop from the soup. I believe that More to Your Door came out to talk about our back to school and our theme for the year, and so next month's scoop from the soup will be about transportation and a dire need for bus drivers. That is a great way of communication because it does have a reach of about 10,000 people. As far as our social media efforts, we have 5,000 followers on our Facebook page, almost 2,000 on X, formerly known as Twitter, and about 1,200 on Instagram. And then I continue to get out about 2 newsletters a month. As far as academic programs, we're excited that Teresa Huff has been hired as the Innovative Programming Coordinator for that new program. And we are doing NWA testing and our state testing. Results from the spring came in, and that will help us guide our instruction for the year, so teachers are starting to break through and take a look at that data. For safety and operations, the critical incident mapping has been received, and we will be working with that company as well as law enforcement on how those maps will be used. And the county is working on an agreement with the 911 call center with the release of those maps and for safety or any kind of active violence situation. For the learning environment, I just want to give a big shout out to the high school and their Positive School Climate team, and they've been doing a lot with recognizing students and staff. And also Scott School, if you haven't seen, they have an I Matter sign, and they've been taking pictures of kids, and that's been really, really cute to see. For personnel, we welcome Rachel Nowak to our 4-8 dean position. So she filled in for Corey during her maternity leave, and so she's replacing Taylor. Taylor was kind of the behavioral specialist, and we ended up doing another dean instead of the behavioral specialist. And then Erin Cermak will be taking the 5K specialist position that Courtney vacated. And then we're just continuing to hire. So if you know people who are interested, please spread the word. I even almost had my husband convinced in driving bus, but he can't get done with the first run before he has to start work. So he says if he can quit his job, he'll come drive bus. That's not an option.
Thank you. Any questions for Shauna? Okay, entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Support.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, where?
Rob has
So I am
resolution for signature.